casual, where today we are going to be starting our first episode of our little mini series, or whatever you want to call it, where we predict free agent destinations for the current free agent class. And in today's episode, we will be talking about quarterbacks and running backs, as you can tell by the thumbnail. Now, I'm combining these two positions because I'm probably going to keep combining positions in all our videos just because free agency is in like 2 weeks, so we don't really have a lot of time to have every position group have their own positions or own videos. And some positions, like quarterback, don't really have a lot of big names. So this just makes the video have a little more talent to talk about in this video, and it allows us to make sure we get all the videos out before free agency. And on top of the free agents, I will be throwing in some players that could get released over the offseason, could get traded over the offseason, and give a prediction for those guys as well. Not all those guys will actually end up on a new team, but I think it's just fun just to add some more players to talk about. Just because player movement is fun to me, just watching guys switch teams and just see guys in new uniforms. So I want to talk about as many players as we can, which is why we'll throw some of those guys in there. But we are going to start off with the actual free agents. And the first guy we have up is Russell Wilson. Now, he signed a 1-year deal with the Giants. He had that great game against Dallas where he threw for like 400 plus yards, went into overtime, and then it kind of went a little bit downhill. Jackson Dart came in, Jameis Winston even came in over him. And I think they're just going to stick with Jameis and Russ. And I don't think, or Jameis and Jackson Dart, and I don't think Russell Wilson is going to go back to the Giants. Now, when thinking about it, a good fit for Russ, I think the Giants was a great fit. They had him for like 4 to 5 weeks or whatever it was. He had a good game, and then he sat the bench for their young quarterback, and he was a mentor for him. Now, this isn't really a team with a young quarterback that needs a mentor, but I think this is a team that quarterback is injured. We don't know when their quarterback's going to come back, and they might need a quarterback that can start for them for the first 4 weeks of the season, but they also might just want a guy as a backup just in case that quarterback gets hurt again. Not that this quarterback has injury issues, but my prediction for Russell Wilson, again, these predictions aren't going to be like, I'm not doing intense research on salary cap and all that, because if you look at the salary cap numbers now and you compare it to the amount of money teams will have to spend at the beginning of free agency, it's probably going to be a lot different just with all players getting cut and contracts getting restructured and all that. So I'm just predicting teams. And I'm going to have Russell Wilson go to the Kansas City Chiefs. We don't know when Mahomes is going to be healthy. That's who I was talking about. It seems like he might try and play week 1. That seems crazy to me. But if he does play, you get a good backup in Russell Wilson. And if he's out for like the first month, because maybe they put him on IR week 1 or whatever, and he's out for the first 4 weeks, you've got Russell Wilson in there. And I think Russell Wilson, if he's your quarterback for 4 weeks, he can get you 2 wins. And if you're 2-2 with Mahomes coming back, that's not the end of the world if you're the Chiefs. So I think Russell Wilson would be a great guy. I do think they need to upgrade over Minshew. If they need a quarterback for like the first 4 or 5 weeks, I think they need someone better than Minshew. And I think Russell Wilson is an upgrade on Minshew. I don't think he'll cost them a lot of money as well. So I like that fit with Russ in Kansas City. Next quarterback is Marcus Mariota. Again, Mariota, as was it Al Michaels, I think that said that, who really kept emphasizing the Mariota. Marcus Mariota from the Commanders, I could very well easily see him going back to the Commanders. He had a decent amount of success. They have a very run-heavy offense with Jaden Daniels designed runs. They ran the ball very well last year. Mariota kind of fits that. So I just said that a lot. I could see him going back to Washington. You probably need a good backup with Jaden Daniels after the injury-filled season he had last year. I don't mind them bringing Mariota back. However, I do have them going after a different quarterback later in this video as the backup to Jaden Daniels. And therefore, I'm going to, in this prediction, have Mariota leave. Similar to Russell Wilson, I think the best role for Mariota is a mentor for a young quarterback, a guy that if you need to plug him in for 3 weeks because your young quarterback's not playing well or injured or not ready, he's your guy, like we saw with Jaden Daniels last year. It didn't work out for the Commanders. They didn't win a ton of games, but I don't think that was all Mariota's fault. The defense was really bad. It wasn't a great situation regardless. I don't know how realistic this is. I don't know how much Mariota and this organization still like each other, but I thought it would be fun. I'm going to predict Mariota goes to the Titans. Right now, Cam Ward's backup is Will Levis and Kyle Allen. I think Cam Ward needs a more veteran, steady presence in that quarterback room. Why not bring Mariota back to Tennessee? I could see maybe a guy like Russell Wilson going to Tennessee, but I thought it'd be cooler to have Marcus Mariota go back to Tennessee, be a mentor for Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward should start right away, and I hope he doesn't get injured. So this is more just a straight up backup, not a guy that might plug and play like the Chiefs might need Russell Wilson to do. This is just getting in a backup quarterback. But I just thought Cam Ward needs a better backup than Will Levis, especially going into year 2. And why not bring Mariota back to where it all started? Next up is Aaron Rodgers. Signed a 1-year deal with Pittsburgh. It wasn't the worst season in the world for the Steelers. They did what they always do. They win about 9 to 10 games and lose in the first round of the playoffs. They did fire Mike Tomlin. And I feel like some people see that and be like, oh, Mike Tomlin's out of here. Aaron Rodgers is out of here. He's probably going to retire. I think there's a chance he does retire. But if he were to stay in the NFL, you know who Pittsburgh hired as their new NFL head coach? I don't know why I said that. Do you know why Pitt said it like that? Do you know who Pittsburgh hired as their new coach? They hired Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy used to be the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, which Aaron Rodgers used to play for. That Mike McCarthy hire seems so out of nowhere for me. Like, why would the Steelers hire Mike McCarthy? Excuse me. Why would the Steelers hire Mike McCarthy? In my opinion, it's to convince Aaron Rodgers to come back. Now, I know they have Will Howard. I like Will Howard. But it's just like, why would you hire Mike McCarthy if you don't want Aaron Rodgers to come back, in my opinion? So I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers go right back to Pittsburgh if he doesn't retire. It just feels weird seeing him go to like a Falcons or a Browns or a Vikings or a Dolphins. It just doesn't make sense to me. And because of that Mike McCarthy hire, I'm going Rodgers to Pittsburgh. Next, we have Malik Willis, probably the second. I tried to order these in relevance of free agency, so you saw the quarterbacks get a little bit better as we're going down here. But Malik Willis is one of the more intriguing players in free agency at the quarterback position. He's been a backup almost his whole career, especially since leaving Tennessee. And he's really found a home on the Green Bay Packers. He had a great year when he did come in for Jordan Love. The game against the Bears, he played pretty good. He had a stretch last year where he won them 3 games. So Malik Willis has played very well in backing up Jordan Love. But I think because the NFL draft is literally just Mendoza, and then there's a huge gap until you get to guys like Ty Simpson and Garrett Nussmeier, Malik Willis is the second most intriguing young quarterback available. It's Mendoza at 1 probably, and then it's Malik Willis. All the teams that could use a quarterback, like the Cardinals, the Dolphins, the Jets, who else? The Colts if Daniel Jones leaves. All these teams that could use and want a young quarterback that don't really have that opportunity to draft one because a guy like Dante Moore is not on the board are looking towards Malik Willis, because I don't remember how old Malik Willis is quickly look that up. He's 26, right? He still has potential. And the Green Bay Packers, they had an offensive coordinator by the name of Jeff Hatley. Was he their offensive coordinator? He was their defensive coordinator. My fault. But Jeff Hatley has some experience with the Green Bay Packers, and he is now the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins are likely going to move on from Tua, whether they cut him, whether they trade him. Spoiler: he's going to be mentioned later in this video. I feel like this has been talked about before, just because of the Jeff Hatley hire, the fact that Malik Willis might want a big contract to be a starter or be a chance to be a starter on another team. Miami is likely a place where a guy like Malik Willis can actually be the starter. So I'm going to have Malik Willis go to the Miami Dolphins. And we'll see, now that Malik Willis has had time in the NFL to get better and be more experienced, maybe things can go better than they did when he first got in the league on the Titans. And our final free agent quarterback is Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones was looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. MVP candidate. The Colts were 8-1, 7-1, whatever it was. And he was looking like he was about to get a huge contract in the offseason, maybe even extended before the season even finished. But we all know how that season ended. Daniel Jones suffered the unfortunate Achilles injury, sidelined him for the rest of the season. The Colts fell off, and he went from a guy who could make 4 years, $40 million a year, 4-year, 160, 200 million plus in total money. He might sign a 1-year contract now with whoever ends up signing him. However, I do think that's going to be the Colts. I think the Colts bring him back because they realize now they can bring him back likely on a much cheaper contract than before the Achilles injury. Because you can't pay a guy like Daniel Jones a 4-year, $150, $200 million contract coming off an Achilles injury, right? But I feel like you have to bring him back because the team was so much better with him at quarterback than they were without him. So I think they bring Daniel Jones back. I mean, a team like Miami, the Jets, the Cardinals, who knows, even the Vikings could bring him back on a 1-year deal. But I think he's going to want some longer-term stability. I think the only place he has a chance at that is the Colts. So I think it's in the Colts' best interest to bring him back. I think it's in his best interest to re-sign with the Colts. Before we talk about some other quarterbacks that could be on the move this offseason, like a Tua, we're going to talk about the running back free agents. The first guy up is Isaiah Pacheco. Now, I very well could see him coming back on the Chiefs, but he didn't have the best year on the Chiefs. He's a free agent. Kareem Hunt's a free agent. The Chiefs are in position to draft a guy like Jeremiah Love. They could spend big money. There's been reports of them maybe getting a guy like Travis Etienne, getting a guy like Breece Hall, even Kenneth Walker. So there's just so many names for the Chiefs at running back that it feels like they won't be bringing back Isaiah Pacheco. And honestly, I struggled a lot trying to figure out where to put Isaiah Pacheco if he's not going to the Chiefs, because I don't think he's a starter. At least I don't think he's going to attract that on the market. I think he's the type of guy you want as a really high-end RB2. Like I don't think the Niners are going to bring in Pacheco because they got McCaffrey. I don't think the Ravens are going to bring him in because they got Derrick Henry. But I also don't think a team with the worst running back in football is going to have Pacheco be their starter. Right? I think he's a high-end RB2 that you want backing up a low-end RB1 and creating a really good 1-2 punch. Now, looking at all the teams that could be in need of that type of RB2, and right now, My prediction for Isaiah Pacheco is the Buccaneers. Because they have Bucky Irving, who's that more elusive, really fast guy. Why not bring in a physical runner, the guy who hates the ground as he runs? The joke we all like to make with Isaiah Pacheco. Now, I know Rachaad White is a free agent as well. Spoiler alert, I don't have him returning to the Bucks. That's the only reason why Pacheco is going to the Bucks is because Rachaad White is leaving the Bucks. So I think the Bucks lose Rachaad White to a team that gives him more money, and therefore they have a spot filled up. I like Sean Tucker, but they seem to be completely fine last year with Bucky, White, and Tucker. So now they can have Bucky, Pacheco, and Sean Tucker. Again, I had no idea where to put Pacheco, but I saw that I predicted Rachaad White leaving Tampa Bay, and then I was like, you know what? There's a spot open there for Pacheco, so I threw him to Tampa Bay. I could still very well see him going back to the Chiefs, even if they get one of those top names in free agency. Next, we have J.K. Dobbins coming off of a big injury. He might have played in the Super Bowl, I'm pretty sure, if they made it there. And he was actually having himself a pretty good season in Denver, I thought. I know we all wanted R.J. Harvey to play over him because he's the exciting rookie, and you saw R.J. Harvey be really productive when he did play, but so was R.J. Harvey. R.J. Harvey was very good for the Broncos. He had that game against Cincy where he had 100 yards. He had 100 yards against Dallas as well. He had some good games. They don't really have a lot outside of R.J. Harvey. Denver does. You saw it. They wanted the two running backs. They liked having Harvey and Dobbins. I don't think Dobbins is going to cost a ton of money because of the injury. And I think they like that duo there. So I'm going to have the Broncos keep J.K. Dobbins. You can have him, Harvey. It's not going to cost you a lot of money to bring Dobbins back. Dobbins was playing pretty good for you when he was on the team. You can have that because he's more of the running back, whereas Harvey's a very good receiving back. I like the mixture. Why not run it back, in my opinion? Next guy is Rico Dowdle. He signed a one-year deal with the Panthers. He had those two incredible games against Miami and Dallas, but his production in the run game definitely took a dip towards the end of the season. Chuba Hubbard started getting back involved in the offense. And honestly, it kind of feels like they're not going to bring Rico Dowdle back because they have Chuba. They still have Jonathan Brooks. We don't know what he's going to come back from his injuries. I just think they're going to use their money elsewhere instead of re-signing a guy like Rico Dowdle, especially just because of the inconsistency in production you saw from him. So I do think he leaves the Panthers. And again, you're looking similar to Pacheco. I think Dowdle's better than Pacheco. You're just looking at these teams that could use a low-end RB1, a high-end RB2. And honestly, this team just lost one of their high-end RB2s, and that's the Kansas City Chiefs. I have Pacheco leaving the Chiefs. Why not get a guy like Rico Dowdle? You can still sign Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, or Kenneth Walker, or you could still draft Jeremiah Love, because honestly, a backfield of Jeremiah Love and Rico Dowdle sounds pretty good, if you ask me. You have really good run blockers on the interior, or just linemen overall on the interior, guys like Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith. I think the Chiefs should add more to that interior O-line as well. I don't think Rico's going to cost a ton of money just because, again, didn't have the greatest finish to the season. And he'll be a very good RB2 if the Chiefs decide to splurge on some of the or draft Jeremiah Love. And if he's not going to go back to the Panthers, he could also maybe go to Tampa. There's a lot of Pittsburgh, maybe, Houston, New Orleans. I kind of like the Chiefs for a guy like Rico Dowdle. And if he wants to compete for a championship, it's a pretty good place to go. Next up, we have Tyler Algier, another one of those high-end RB2s. Similar to J.K. Dobbins, him and Bijan really are one of the better running back duos in the league. That's not Dobbins and RJ Harvey. I was just kind of how the Broncos seem to like the combination of Harvey and Dobbins, similar to how the Falcons like the combination of Algier and Bijan. But again, as I said, Bijan and Algier is probably one of the better running back duos in the NFL. And despite how good Bijan is, like he's one of the best, if not the best, running back in football, and they still give Algier the ball. To me, that means they really like Tyler Algier because they're still willing to give him the ball despite how good Bijan is. And if they like him that much, I don't see why they don't bring him back. So I have Tyler Algier going right back to the Atlanta Falcons. I don't think he's going to require a lot of money, and I think they really like that backfield. He's a really good backup running back. I don't see any reason why, and he's been there for a long time too. I don't see there to be a reason why they need to move on from Tyler Algier. Next, we have Rachaad White. Now, I kind of spoiled already that he's not going back to Tampa, hence why Isaiah Pacheco went to Tampa. And I didn't have Rachaad White leave Tampa because Isaiah Pacheco went there. I had Isaiah Pacheco go to Tampa because I predicted Rachaad White leaving Tampa. Now, I know he's very similar to RJ Harvey, how they like the running back room they have. He's been there a long time. And there's no reason for this. Like, it's not like, oh, Pacheco's definitely going to leave, or Algier's definitely going to stay, or Rachaad White definitely going to leave. I just found another spot that there's some connections to Rachaad White. Because the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2 years ago was a man named Liam Cohen. He's now the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jags are in a bit of a predicament with their pending free agent, Travis Etienne. And I haven't seen a lot of things that Travis Etienne is, 100% going to stay. And if Travis Etienne leaves, they just have Bashal Tutin. I like Bashal Tutin, don't get me wrong. But you can bring in a guy like Rachaad White who has familiarity with Liam Cohen's system, and you can have him and Bashal Tutin be your 1-2 punch. I kind of like it. I think Tutin deserves more reps, but I also don't think you take reps away from Travis Etienne because Travis Etienne's really good. But if you don't feel like paying Travis Etienne a bunch of money, you can get a lower tier guy in Rachaad White who has familiarity with Liam Cohen. Bashal Tutin can get more reps and maybe become what Etienne was for you, and you have a very good backup in Rachaad White, or they're both really good running back 1A, 1B for the Jags. There's no real substance behind this outside of the fact that I could very well see Etienne moving on. Rachaad White has familiarity. He's a very good running back as a guy that is a starter slash backup slash 50-50. So I'm going to have Rachaad White go to Jacksonville. Next up is Kenneth Gainwell. He actually had a very good season for Pittsburgh. Really surprised me with how good of a season he had with Pittsburgh, especially in the receiving game. And he was basically like their best receiver at times at the running back position. In a team with DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, Calvin Austin. It was Kenneth Gainwell that decided to throw the ball to basically every play, it felt like sometimes. And this was his best season by far. Career year for Kenneth Gainwell. Because he was really just like a backup on Philly. Didn't get a ton of opportunities. And he goes to Pittsburgh despite Jaylen Warren being there, and he has his career year. I'm going to have Kenneth Gainwell go back to Pittsburgh. I don't think they're going to have to pay him a ton of money. It's a common thing with running backs. How much do you pay him? Running backs don't get paid. I don't think a backup like Kenneth Gainwell is going to get paid a lot of money. He had the best season of his career in Pittsburgh despite being the non-clear running back one. Despite not being the clear running back one. In my opinion, I don't see why Kenneth Gainwell needs to leave. Maybe another team pays him a ton of money. But I just don't know if you can trust. I don't know if another team is going to be willing to pay Kenneth Gainwell enough money could take him away from Pittsburgh. Because if you're doing that, you're going to give him a more significant role. I don't know if teams are going to want to do that. So I think he's going to end up just getting a slightly cheaper deal to stay in Pittsburgh. Next, we have Javonte Williams. Signed a one-year deal with Dallas, had a very good year with Dallas. Another guy that kind of had one of his best years of his career. Now that he's kind of fully removed from the injuries he had in Denver. However, the Cowboys seem to just like to shuffle running backs around. They got Rico Dowdle. It was Ezekiel Elliott, then it was Tony Pollard, then it was Rico Dowdle, and it was Javonte Williams. So I think Javonte Williams leaves. Dallas doesn't really like to bring. I mean, I guess Dallas in free agency, their big free agency is always just bringing back their players. But I'm going to have Javonte Williams leave Dallas. And when you're looking at some teams that could use a top end running back, you got the Texans as an option. You still have the Chiefs could get a guy like Javonte, but I don't think they go Javonte and Rico. The Saints, if they move on from Kamara. The Jets, if Breece Hall leaves. The Seahawks, if Kenneth Walker leaves. But I think that Javonte Williams goes to Houston. I like Woody Marks as much as the next guy, but I feel like you need a guy next to Woody Marks. You don't want Woody Marks to be your bell cow. And that was Nick Chubb last year. But with Nick Chubb's injuries and all that, I don't know. And age as well. Get a guy like Javonte Williams. He can be your clear running back one. You can still have Woody Marks be the backup, which I think you want with Javonte Williams. A guy like a quality backup, a quality enough backup like Woody Marks, backing up Javonte Williams. They need some explosiveness on that offense. They need to help out CJ Stroud. They need a run game. And again, I like Woody Marks, and I think a bigger part of their run game not being that good is their O-line, not Woody Marks or even Nick Chubb. But if you're going to invest in the O-line, I think you should also invest in the running back position. And I think going from Woody Marks and Nick Chubb to Javonte Williams and Woody Marks is a very good upgrade to help out that Houston run game alongside them, hopefully adding to that offensive line. Next guy is Travis Etienne. Another spoiler was kind of made here. I think he leaves Jacksonville. I think they like Tootin. I think they bring in a guy. If it's not Rachaad White, I think they just bring in a guy to create that 1-2 running back room with Bashal Tootin. It seems like that in the NFL, you either have one of the best running backs in the league or you have two very good running backs. And I think the Jags, if they lose out on Etienne, they rely on that. And Etienne instead needs to find himself a new home. But the thing with Etienne is he's good enough that he can be that number one guy. You don't want to pay Etienne all this money and have it be a 50-50 split or even a 55-45 split. You want to give Etienne at least 65% of the carries if you're going to pay him the money that he might and likely will make this offseason. So then I'm looking through some teams that could pay him that money. Again, I'm not worried about salary cap. I'm just worried about a team that doesn't have money already invested in the running back position. Right? So this team might not actually have the money to sign Etienne, but although I did see, when I was looking up possible landing spots for Etienne, I did see this team put up a couple times, so maybe they do have the ability to make that money to sign a guy like Etienne. But this team, right now they actually do have a guy that they're kind of invested in, but he very well could move on to his next team, and we will actually talk about him later, and that is the New Orleans Saints and Alvin Kamara. I think there's a good chance Kamara leaves the Saints this offseason, and without Kamara, their best running backs are Kendre Miller and Devin Neal. Travis Etienne is from New Orleans, I'm pretty sure, Louisiana, something. He's from, I'm pretty sure, the state of Louisiana. He gets to go home, play for the Saints. If they move on from Kamara, they don't really have the top end running back, and they also don't have a running back that you want as a 50-50. So I think Etienne makes perfect sense. He can be the number one guy. You don't have to give him all the touches because Devin Neal is a good enough running back to get 30% of the carries or whatever. If you want to do a 70-30, 65-35, you can do that with Etienne without significantly hindering a really good backup running back, even though I do like Devin Neal. I don't think you want a Devin Neal, Rashad White, or Devin Neal, Isaiah Pacheco, or Devin Neal, Rico Dowdle backfield. You'd much rather have Devin Neal, Travis Etienne, or Devin Neal, Jeremiah Love, something like that. So I am going to have the Saints pick up Etienne. Next up, we have Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker. There's a lot of reports similar with him and Breece Hall, because these are the top two running backs. It's all the same teams. Like, do they go to the Saints? Do they go to the Jets? Do they go to the Seahawks? Do they go to the Chiefs? Probably not the Seahawks. I've seen Kenneth Walker to the Titans or the Panthers even. I find it hard to believe the Seahawks let Kenneth Walker go. And I'm just going to say right now, my prediction is Kenneth Walker stays a Seattle Seahawk. However, I think it is more likely that Kenneth Walker gets franchise tagged than it is extended by the Seahawks. And I also think he's more likely to leave for a long-term deal on another team than he is to get a long-term deal on the Seahawks. The Seahawks have to pay guys like JSN, Devon Witherspoon, and I don't know. I know he just won them Super Bowl MVP and everything, but to be honest, I think Super Bowl MVP was the entire defense for Seattle. They just didn't have a player to give it to. I think they end up franchise tagging Kenneth Walker, and then maybe he leaves the next offseason, or then they figure out a contract extension for Kenneth Walker. But I just don't see him getting a long-term contract this offseason with Seattle, but I also don't see him leaving Seattle. So I do have him going back to the Seahawks. It just might not be via a long-term contract and more of a franchise tag. Next guy we have is Breece Hall. Again, similar to Kenneth Walker, very with like with the type of teams that people are projecting him to go to if he doesn't go back to the Jets. However, I think the best spot for him and the most likely spot is just to go back to the Jets. It probably sucks for Breece Hall because the Jets aren't very good. But I think they're just going to pay him a lot of money just to keep him. I don't think they're going to let him walk. He's one of their best players. And I feel like because they didn't trade him at the deadline, when they traded away Sauce Gardner, when they traded away Quinn Williams, that was a sign that they want to keep Breece Hall. Or maybe they just didn't find a trade partner for him. But I think they're just going to pay him because he's good and they don't have a ton of great players on their team. So that's what I just think. I think they're going to pay him maybe a little bit more money than maybe they want to, just so he doesn't leave. And then maybe Breece Hall trade rumors will start back up again in 2 deadlines from now. But I think this offseason he resigns with the Jets. Now we're going to move on to the section of players that aren't free agents, but they could get traded, or they could get cut, or expected to get traded or cut at both quarterback and running back. And the first guy on the board is Anthony Richardson. I'm still very confused about Anthony Richardson as a football player. I still think he has potential. But it was him and Daniel Jones were competing in the offseason. Daniel Jones won and completely took off with that job. Obviously, we know what happened with Daniel Jones and the Colts last year. I do think that Anthony Richardson is going to draw trade interest, and I very well could see him getting traded because I think the Colts are going to stick with Daniel Jones and try and get off Richardson before he hits free agency. Because he's got 5 years. He's entering year 4 since getting drafted. I think they want to avoid having to pick up his 5th-year option. So I think they want to trade him now before he gets a bunch of money or before they have to decide. Because they don't want to lose him for nothing, right? Maybe you could trade him for like a 4th-round pick. You'd rather trade him for a 4th-round pick now than lose him for nothing in a year or 2. So I think they trade Anthony Richardson, whether it's in the offseason or the deadline. And one interesting team that could use a guy like it, not could use a guy like Anthony Richardson, they have their quarterback of the future. It's just an interesting, like maybe they trade for him, try and develop him. Their quarterback had some injuries. I know so was Anthony Richardson. Who knows how much of this makes sense? but I have him going to the Washington Commanders. The Commanders trade like a fourth or fifth round pick. They get a guy like Anthony Richardson. Maybe they flip him in 2 years because maybe Jaden Daniels misses 8 games over the next 2 seasons. Maybe Jaden Daniels misses 4 games next season. Richardson comes in, plays well. They trade him, and they turn that fourth round pick they got to get him into a third round pick. I don't know. It's a very good system. I like Cliff Kingsbury. Right? Cliff Kingsbury's there still. Oh, it's David Blau. Well, they had Cliff Kingsbury, but I think it's a good system in Washington. I know their offense didn't really play very well last year, but I think there was a lot more reasons besides their system. But I don't know. Why not take the chance on Anthony Richardson? You have Jaden Daniels, obviously, because he could go to teams like I think the Vikings are another very real possibility. But I do have the Vikings acquiring a different quarterback. And spoiler, that quarterback is Mac Jones. I've seen this before. I've seen mock-ups for trades of getting Mac Jones into Minnesota because you don't fully believe in J.J. McCarthy. And outside of J.J. McCarthy, they don't have really anything. Carson Wentz isn't it anymore. Max Brosmer was probably never it. Mac Jones was one of the best backup quarterbacks in the NFL last year. I very well could see him staying in San Francisco. But if the Vikings can get, or if the Niners can get a good trade for him, I think you take it. I think you hope Purdy stays healthier this season, and you take advantage of Mac Jones' trade value because it is at an all-time high right now. Because if Brock Purdy plays the whole season, Mac Jones never plays, his value might go down next offseason. I think this is when his value is at the highest because he did play last season and he played very well. If you can get a good offer, I think you do it, and I think the Vikings could be a team that could make that good offer because they do potentially need either a quarterback that can compete with McCarthy or just a good quarterback that can back him up because they don't have good backups right now in Minnesota. But I only think this is possible if San Fran gets a good offer because they might want to keep Mac Jones because he has familiar with the system. He played well. They maybe can't fully trust Purdy to play all 17 games. So you want to keep Mac Jones. But if you get a good offer, I think you maximize on Mac Jones' trade value if you're the Niners. Next up is Kirk Cousins. It does seem like Kirk Cousins is likely going to get cut, so that's why I threw him in this video. He's not currently a free agent, but I believe he will likely be a free agent. All signs are pointing to him being a free agent at some point. And I think, similar to a guy like Russell Wilson or even Mariota, but I think Kirk Cousins might be the better of the three, is you want him as a veteran quarterback that can mentor a young guy, play for an injured quarterback like Russell Wilson is doing for the Chiefs in these predictions, or a guy that could compete with a young quarterback. And I think a team that makes sense for Kirk Cousins, it just feels like a Kirk Cousins type of signing, or not a Kirk Cousins type of signing, but this team type of signing to get a guy like Kirk Cousins, and that's the Cleveland Browns. You got Shador and Dylan Gabriel. I think Shador's their quarterback. I think he's the better quarterback. But I don't know how much you fully believe in Shador, even if he's better than Dylan Gabriel. You can bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins. He has shown he can be a very good backup. And if your quarterback is injured, if Shador gets hurt, Gabriel gets hurt, whatever, you need to throw in a guy that you can count on to just run the offense and potentially even win you some games. It's Kirk Cousins. And guess what? I'm pretty sure the Browns play the Falcons next season, and they also play the Buccaneers. And you know how Kirk Cousins does against the Buccaneers. He does pretty good against them. So that's almost one free win if you play him against the Bucs. Because they need some stability. They had Joe Flacco, and I like Joe Flacco, but he's on the Bengals now. Well, he's actually a free agent, but he was on the Bengals at the end of the year. Bringing a guy like Kirk Cousins, I think he could be a very good mentor for Shedeur Sanders and even Dylan Gabriel. And it just seems like a Browns type of signing to sign Kirk Cousins. Next is Tua. It seems, again, similar to Kirk Cousins, that all signs are pointing to Tua not being on the Dolphins. Now, I know they want to find a trade partner for him because if they cut him, it's like a $100 million cap hit or penalty, whatever. Who's going to Tua's currently on like a $40 million contract, $30 million contract. I don't see a world where anybody trades for Tua's contract, especially if I'm an NFL team potentially wanting Tua. Am I going to trade for him and take on that 30 million, or am I just going to wait for the Dolphins to cut him and then sign him for a much cheaper deal? I'm just going to wait and sign him. So I think Tua will end up getting cut by Miami for that very specific reason. And a team that right now also currently has their quarterback, but could potentially not have their quarterback. And as we mentioned before, outside of Mendoza, who likely will go to the Raiders at 1, there are so many teams that need a quarterback or could need a quarterback, like the Jets, the Cardinals, the Dolphins, who just don't have a guy to go after because there's no quarterback worth taking in the first round outside of Ty Simpson, who might go like mid to late 20s if he goes in the first. But Arizona's not going to take Ty Simpson in the first. Miami's not going to take Ty Simpson in the first. The Jets aren't going to take Ty Simpson in the first. These are teams that could need a quarterback that can't get it in the draft. And one of those teams I believe that could also be moving on from their current quarterback is the Arizona Cardinals. I think they move on from Kyler. And if they do, again, Tua is not that much of an upgrade, if he even is an upgrade at all over Kyler. I think I'd rather have Kyler than Tua. But if Tua's not going to cost a ton of money, I think the Cardinals might just be forced into signing Tua. Because again, you could get a guy like Kirk Cousins. You could trade for Anthony Richardson, trade for Mac Jones, sign Malik Willis, maybe take Daniel Jones away from the Colts, bring in Aaron Rodgers. There's not a lot of options that are better than Tua. And probably the only option better than Tua is Kyler Murray. But I think they move on from Kyler. And I think you can get Tua for much cheaper. I think Tua at a much cheaper contract might be more valuable for the Cardinals than current Kyler Murray on his current contract. So I think they move on from Kyler, get off that contract, bring in Tua after Miami gets off his contract, and see if you can get things to work with Tua in Arizona. Speaking of Kyler, he's the next quarterback we're going to talk about because I do think they move on from him. Now, they actually might be able to find a trade partner for Kyler. So I could very well see Kyler getting traded and not cut. But there's a certain team picking number 2 overall that had a very solid quarterback prospect waiting for them in Dante Moore, who then decided to go back to college because he didn't want to play for the Jets. Spoiler alert, it's the Jets. I think this has been not reported like the Jets are talking with the Cardinals, but everyone who's like predicting who Kyler should get traded to, they all say the Jets. I think it makes sense. You have a decent infrastructure on offense. You have Breece Hall. You have Garrett Wilson. You have a good O-line. They've had some good drafts in the O-line recently. You can use that second pick on a defensive player, right? Maybe like an Arvell Reese. They also have another second-round pick via the Colts from the Sauce Gardner trade. Maybe you get a receiver for Kyler to throw to, not named Garrett Wilson. The Jets can seriously build around Kyler this offseason with all the picks they accumulated for trading away Quinn Williams, trading away Sauce Gardner. You can add to the defense because you need to after trading those 2 guys away, but they also have plenty of resources to add around Kyler and make that trade actually worth it. So part of it is because I've just seen a lot of people say that he could get traded to the Jets, just like predicting. But I think it actually makes a lot of sense. So I also have Kyler going to the Jets. And we have 2 more running backs that I think could be onto their next team. The first guy is James Conner. The main reason is he's up there in age. He's coming off a big injury. And I'm pretty sure they saved like $8 million if they cut him, which actually is pretty solid. So I think Conner finds his next team. And a team that lost their starting running back that I have not predicted them to get a new one is the Dallas Cowboys. An older James Conner coming off a season-ending injury on a cheap contract, it screams Dallas Cowboys. I don't know why. It just does. So I'm going to have, if they lose out on Javonte Williams and don't get one of the top guys, James Conner is very well still, in my opinion, a good running back. How does he come off the injury? Who knows? James Conner's dealt with a lot worse in his career, so I trust him to come off an injury. I think it just feels like a Cowboys type of signing, so I'm going to have Conner go to the Cowboys. And finally, I know it's been a long video, but our final guy is Alvin Kamara. I do have him moving on from the Saints, as you saw by my Travis Etienne signing to the Saints. Obviously kicks Kamara out. Same thing with how Conner, there's a team that needed their starting running back, and that was the Dallas Cowboys. You know what other team now doesn't have a starting running back because James Conner got cut? It's the Arizona Cardinals. So I'm going to have Alvin Kamara go to the Arizona Cardinals. Another guy could go to the Cowboys. He could go to the Jets if Breece Hall leaves. He could very well stay on the Saints, but I think the Saints want to move on from Alvin Kamara and maybe get a guy with a little more youth in Travis Etienne. And the Cardinals, they're in need of a running back now. They don't have James Conner. They just cut him. And now their new backfield is Tua and Alvin Kamara. I don't know. I kind of like it. I think Alvin Kamara, it would feel weird to see Alvin Kamara not in a Saints jersey, but I very well could see it being a possibility. And with just the holes left in the NFL at running back position, the Cardinals need one. Why not get a guy like Alvin Kamara, who I still think, just like James Conner, is a very good running back. And because he's older and potentially traded or cut, he might not have a ton of value. So I think Arizona can bring him in, similar to Tua. Try and take these guys who are getting moved on by their team on a cheaper deal and seeing if they can mesh well together. So I like Kamara to the Cardinals. And that will officially, I know, again, as I said, it was a long video, that will officially conclude our running back and quarterback free agency predictions, as well as a few players that could become free agents / get traded. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, comment down below where you think some of these guys are going to sign, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.